Well, for some of you, it's me for the first time. Hi, my name's Lovelda Vincenzi. I'm not going to assume everybody knows who I am. Welcome to this session. It's all about building tomorrow, the future of construction. So if that's what you came to listen to, you're 100% in the right place. As we know, today we're talking about a sector that's responsible for over a third of global emissions, but it's also got massive, massive potential to reshape our future. Whether it's materials or the mindset, building to business models, we have an opportunity to see how we build is actually changing. In this session, we're going to have three distinct segments. The first is a keynote that is very much rooted in a bold, on the ground innovation. So we'll see what's happening right here, right now. The second is a snapshot into how people really think. We're going to have a global premiere of some data that's brand new to the scene. And finally, we'll be ending with a panel that looks at how to scale solutions in this modern day. So first, let's kick off with something that's deeply local and globally relevant. Our first speaker is talking about two of the world's biggest challenges. The first being plastic pollution, and the second being affordable housing. His company transforms plastics and waste material into low-carbon buildings, making construction faster, cheaper, and of course, much more sustainable, especially in the global south. And just to add to it, they're also working with a strong focus on empowering women and communities along the way. So please give a Change Now warm round of applause for the founder and CEO of Kubik, Kidus, Asfaw.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Kidus Asfaw. I'm the founder and CEO of Kubik. And I'm going to do something a little bit different today. I'm actually going to talk about me. One of the things that is not said enough is about how hard it is to build a startup that is trying to make money, but also trying to improve people's lives. So let me tell you mine. It all started off with my parents. I'm born to a family that really invested in their kids' education, but also into making sure that they see the world, and that's exactly what I did. For over 7 years, I worked at an organization called UNICEF and spent my life thinking about how we can innovate through technology and make children's lives better. I traveled to over 40 countries, and what I can see was a booming, very young population all over the world, and it was highly urbanizing. So one of the questions that I would continuously ask myself is, are we doing the right thing to improve the future? Which would mean improving cities. Coincidentally, there was a moment where I turned on the news and I saw this image. This is a landfill, only a kilometer away from where I grew up in Addis Ababa, Ethiopia. It's called Gautier. And it amassed so much trash, it actually turned into an avalanche. It killed over 100 people. And one of the things that I continue to ask myself is, how is it that I've never seen this place before? How come there's so much plastic? And how come nobody was doing anything about it? And this question continued to ponder in me. And there was a moment for work when I went to Côte d'Ivoire in West Africa, and I met my mentor, and we kept talking about this. And one of the things that he said is, well, you've seen a problem, how do we start with a solution? Fast forward 2 years later, we had built an entire project that had built 500 classrooms made out of plastic waste all over Côte d'Ivoire. What you see behind you is trash. Now, as many things would go, people would say, this is successful, we've done our part, and we'll give ourselves a pat on the back. I actually got deeply annoyed that we weren't doing more of this. So after more discussions with my mentor, I decided to leave UNICEF and dedicate my life to doing more of this type of work. And that's when, 3 years ago, I visited that same place that I saw in the news back home, Gautier. Nothing had really changed. It was still a very big heap of trash, with more coming in, But one of the things that I didn't notice was the people that actually live and work in Gautier. We're talking about over 2,000 women. Most of them are girls. And what they do is scavenge for pieces of trash that they can actually turn into cash. Now, my UNICEF brain made me think these girls are desperate, these girls need help. So I would go and actually talk to them. And one of the things that I realized is they're not looking for help, they're looking for business. They were actually trying to negotiate on how much I can buy and at what price. And it actually made me realize this is what dignity looks like. It's when someone feels proud to actually do their job and contribute to the world. So I decided to call my company Kubik a company that is building dignity. And what many people would think is that this is a company that all of a sudden started to raise money, built a product, it's scaling, and everything is great. It actually started like this. I was very lonely. This is an actual picture where I was pitching to an investor from a landfill, presenting on something that I have not built a product for and a company that had no people in it. This is how an entrepreneur starts a company, and not enough people talk about it. But I want to talk to you about how we got to here, being recognized as Time 100's most influential companies in climate, raising the largest ever round for Ethiopia in a startup, meeting a president that governs a country here, and also being named the world's best startup of the year 2 years ago. It starts with people. Starting with talking to people that you can convince to join your mission. That's exactly what I did. People that were working at places like Pepsi, leading supply chain for an entire country, working at Deutsche Bank, making a lot of money, but somehow daring to do exactly what I did, which is change people's lives. And over time, this group of people grew. And one of the things that was very distinct about us is we built it over family. Most of us have kids. And one of the reasons why we all were doing this is because we wanted the future of our children to look different. And what you see here is the first ever building that we made in Ethiopia. And we had our kids paint it because we wanted to make sure that this is an image of what the future could look like. This all sounds great. But let me tell you of 3 times when people have said this could never work. People never thought that we can build a factory. What we did is we built the first ever state-of-the-art recycling factory in Ethiopia that is transforming 5,000 kilos of plastic waste every single day. People said you will never be able to get enough trash, and no, you won't be able to help those poor women on it because the business will never make sense. We were able to equip every single woman in 2 landfills with PPEs, give them decent jobs, and there's 600 of them today that are suppliers and not scavengers for us. People told us no one will buy this. People will never build with it. Well, we're building cafes, we're building bars, we're building houses, schools, clinics, and nobody will know that this is made out of trash because it was designed not to. So as a company, we continue to go against the grain of doing things that people told us we can't because we believed in what the future should be and we worked hard at it. But I want to tell you a very deeply personal story for me, which is about these 2 men. The person that you see on your right is the mayor of a city in eastern Ethiopia. His name is Elias. And the person on the left is one of our investors. His name is Mayar. And this is a story of how they met. I brought Mayar to Ethiopia for the first time, and I took him straight to a landfill. And I introduced him to the mayor of the person who manages it. They hit it off. They were talking about how things could look different. But the thing is, Mayar lives in Switzerland, Elias is in Harar. How are they ever going to do anything together? Well, as part of that conversation, they found themselves going to this public park, and Mayar started to meet every single child that is there playing soccer, playing basketball. And that's when he said, I want me, Elias, and you to build the first ever public library made out of trash. And that's what we're doing today. sometimes when you're starting a company, you have an idea of how it would work, but there's so many things that go against you. You don't understand how you're going to bring people around along with your journey. And these two people that should have never met, that should have never done anything that impacted people's lives, are doing it today. And they're doing it not because of Kubik, but because of a mission of changing what the future could look like. But let me end this around the future. These are kids that were at this park the moment that we broke ground to build this library. And they were not happy. They kept coming to me and saying, why are you doing this? And I'm like, but we're building a new library. Isn't that really fun? They said, no. We don't want you to take away that tree behind us. This is a tree that we play around. This is a tree that our parents used to play around. And this is a tree that my grandparents have talked about. We do not want you to touch this. This is a moment that I realized that, when you are doing good, you have to consider about the people and the future that you're doing this for. And what we did is we redesigned the entire library around this tree. The reason why I find this tree really interesting is it really resonates with a journey of many social entrepreneurs, and it comes down to endurance. When people think about endurance, they think about it as just overcoming hard stuff. I actually believe it's how you turn that hard stuff into glory. And that's what I believe that we're doing at Kubik today, and what I deeply believe that many social entrepreneurs are doing around the world. I hope you're part of that story too. Thank you.
I'm always ready. Well, was that not an insightful dialogue, insightful conversation? So we're going to continue this conversation going. The future of construction isn't just about buildings. We think of it much as buildings, but it's also about systems, people, and how those two work really well together. Our next guest comes from a company that is over 360 years old. I swear I had to double check that. I went to the website and had a look. It's for real, over 360 years old. But their focus is firmly on what comes next. Today we're going to get a first look at some new global insights and what people are really thinking about sustainability when it comes to construction. We're going to be looking at what's shifting, what's stuck, and what we need to do about it. So to help me in this dialogue, please give a warm Change Now round of applause to the Group Sustainability Director, the Group Director of Sustainable Business Development and Construction from Saint-Gobain, Pascal Eveillard. Hello, Pascal. Welcome to the stage.
Thank you.
I'm going to start with one of the basics. For people who have not come across Saint-Gobain before, because there might be many in the audience who haven't heard about the company, even though it's been around for literally centuries, can you perhaps tell us a little bit about it?
Yes, sure. Good afternoon, everyone. Very glad to be here today. As you reminded, Saint-Gobain is a 360-year young company.
Correction. Thank you for the
Young
correction.
company.
360 years young.
And we strive to make the world a better home. This is our purpose. We are a leading producer and distributor of construction products and building solutions. Just to name a few, we have a very broad range of products. We are a producer of plasterboards, insulation products, waterproofing solutions, construction chemicals to help decarbonize cement and concrete. We also produce roofing and siding products in North America. For Saint-Gobain, what is important is to put innovation, customers, and sustainability at the very heart of our strategy. We want to innovate to reduce our footprint, but we want also to innovate to help our customers to build and renovate more sustainably, to have buildings which have a reduced environmental impact, less energy consumption, reduced carbon footprint, but also buildings that will deliver more comfort and well-being for people, buildings occupants as well as workers on the job sites. And also very important for Saint-Gobain, we believe, as a large corporation, that we have a role to play in accelerating market transformation.
Market transformation, and in the heart of the business, I love that you talk about not just the products, but actually creating homes that feel really welcoming for people, that are affordable for them to live in, and also very cozy. Well, today we've got an incredible little debut. I love debuting things, it's great fun. So you've got your global debut of the 2025 Sustainable Construction Barometer. Why did you create this barometer, and what did you hope it would change?
Yes, as you said, today is a premiere. We are very pleased to reveal the results of the third edition of our barometer. Actually, this barometer is part of a complete system we have developed 3 years ago, which is called the Saint-Gobain Sustainable Construction Observatory. I mentioned before that we consider that sustainability is a must-have. For us, it's a no-brainer option to go for more sustainable construction. You reminded the impact on people and the environment of the built environment. Definitely, it's not possible to continue to build and renovate as we did in the past. So there is a real need for change. But if we want to change, if we want to accelerate change, we don't just need to have better solutions. There are already lots of solutions that exist on the market. We will have even better and better solutions. But what is more important is to create a new momentum on the market, to be able to mobilize all stakeholders in the value chain to act for change. And this is very much what we want to do with this observatory. We want to raise awareness for change. We want to identify the barriers for change, but also to identify what are the options to go beyond those barriers. And with this observatory, we have developed a unique platform to bring together all stakeholders on the sector. And we have a barometer. We will discuss the main results. So the barometer is really to measure the state of the opinion regarding sustainable construction. We have a magazine that you can access easily on our website that leaves the floor not only to Saint-Gobain people. There is actually nobody from Saint-Gobain talking in this magazine.
There's literally nobody from Saint-Gobain in the whole magazine. So you publish it, but nobody from...
Absolutely. What we want is to leave the floor to all kinds of stakeholders, sharing experience, sharing good practice. Sometimes they disagree with what we do even, but it's not important. What is important is to create a new momentum. And a third pillar in this observatory are the so-called Saint-Gobain Sustainable Construction Talks that we organize regularly at global and local level, and where we bring together all kinds of stakeholders to discuss some issues, and more importantly, to foster collaboration. So these talks are made to create new kinds of collaborations.
I love the work that you're doing is evaluating what's happening right now, but also creating spaces for the conversations we need to be having in construction. And it's quite unique that your voice isn't necessarily always in those conversations, because often when the conversations are led by large organizations, it can feel as if those conversations have an agenda behind them. But it's quite intelligent of you to say, well, we're not even going to be involved in the magazine. We're going to have other people in this space sharing their expertise in it. We spoke about the barometer. I can't jump over that, because I actually want to know a little bit about what you found out. In particular, what are 2 or 3, because there's lots of data in it, what are 2 or 3 key findings that really stood out for you? And I'm particularly interested in the ones that might challenge how people in this room might perhaps think about construction.
So maybe just a few elements on the barometer before I give you insights into the results. So it's a barometer that we carry out in 27 countries. We survey 4 groups of stakeholders: professionals across the value chain, public officials and public authorities as a second group of stakeholders. We survey also students in architecture and engineering, and as a last group of surveyed stakeholders, NGOs and associations. So quite a broad
Very
panel
across the board.
of stakeholders across the board. And what's new this year, for the very first time, we have also surveyed the public. And in each of the 27 countries, we have surveyed a representative sample, more than 1,000 citizens in each of those 27 countries.
So in each country, 1,000 citizens, so 27,000 individuals from the public were also surveyed.
Absolutely.
Okay.
On top of the 5,000 people as key stakeholders. So this gives us quite a nice overview of what is the state of opinion regarding sustainable construction over the planet. The 27 countries are actually spread all over the different continents. So what are the
what
findings?
What did we learn? What did we find?
So there is a lot. So you will find all the detailed results on our website. I will focus on three main findings. The first one is regarding awareness. It's a good news to see that awareness is there. There is a shared sense of urgency and a strong public support for more sustainable construction. 67% of the stakeholders state to be familiar with sustainable construction, and actually it's 7 points above last year's results. 69% of stakeholders view sustainable construction as a priority, and even 87% say we have to do more in terms of sustainable construction, which is a very strong message. In a time where you have some backlash on sustainability, to have such a high level of respondents.
I'm really surprised by that data point. 87% of people say we have to do something.
Absolutely.
And I think it's very easy to listen to what we're hearing in the world and have a very different opinion. But the survey results don't lie.
It was made December last year.
Okay,
so
December 2024 is when the survey was done.
And the results are communicated today. So it was at a time where some elections had already happened. So good news, 87% of stakeholders consider that we need to do more in sustainable construction. And when it comes to citizens, there is less awareness on what sustainable construction means. Only 38% of the citizens know what it is, but 60% recognize we need to do more in terms of sustainable construction.
So there's an opportunity there in construction.
Absolutely.
The awareness for the public isn't quite as high, but the willingness is there.
It's there, absolutely. Second, learning. Sustainable construction remains very much focused on the environment. Respondents primarily associate sustainable construction with environmental issues. The main criteria that they use to define sustainability and sustainable construction remains very much the same. There are some regional variations in priorities, but basically it's about energy efficiency, carbon footprint, more ecological materials. The human dimension of sustainable construction remains a secondary concern. So there are only 15% of stakeholders and public respondents that consider that sustainable construction has something to do with improved health and well-being of buildings occupants. And this is very much something we need to change.
So people are literally just thinking of carbon emissions, energy efficiency.
Better for the environment, but they forget the people dimension.
So the people dimension, there's opportunity there.
Absolutely.
In terms of the people dimension, in terms of what construction can do for individuals within their
Absolutely.
homes.
And a new topic that has really popped up this year in terms of element of definition or priority identified is resilience to climate change. This has become a priority issue in Africa, in Southeast Asia, and it's the second priority in the Middle East. And this is very new. This is by far the topic that has experienced the most progress over the recent years. So there is a real concern for people to have more resilience into their buildings, into construction.
What I'm hearing is there's a lot of opportunity in construction and in sustainable construction, and resilience is a big one that's available to people.
Maybe a last and third lesson?
Yes, please.
There is a need for more information and more training. only 28% of the stakeholders feel they fully understand what is sustainable construction and what is behind. So there is a lot of room for more information and more education. Only 35% of professionals, meaning contractors, installers, have been trained specifically on sustainability. This is a huge gap, and this is a gap that explains also the big difference we see between intention. Intentions are there, but the actions are still missing. So the gap between intention and acting are probably coming from this lack of confidence given by more education. So raising education and raising awareness should be seen as a top priority.
So there's lots, what I'm seeing, I mean, the barometer is definitely worth going on the website and downloading for yourself and having a full read of, because we can't go through every single stat in there. But I'm hearing there's lots of opportunity for people to dive in. What does the barometer tell us about what to expect in terms of leading the change? You know, what's the role of designers, of innovators, of startups? Did we get some inkling as to where we should be going next?
So yes, this is one of the questions we ask. Who do you believe are the best place to accelerate and to foster and to make change in the construction sector? And the answer is very clear. Everywhere, the ones that come first to be able to act are architects and engineering firms, by far. And this is quite a strong message, and actually a good recognition that if you want to make more sustainable buildings, you need to start at design stage. It's very much a matter of better design. If you want to have better buildings at an affordable price, affordable cost, you need to have it considered from the start at design stage. So designers, engineers, architects are definitely the best place to introduce and to foster change. At the second position, we have the private sector. So private sector at large, encompassing manufacturers like us, encompassing contractors, are considered also to be key players to accelerate change. We may have expected public authorities, public institutions to come first, people to expect more from the public sector. Actually, apart from Europe, where the public institutions come pretty high, second at the same level as the private sector, as private actors, actually it comes at a much lower level in the rest of the world. Clearly, it's considered to be a topic for the private sector, for the private initiative, so it means we have a role to play.
So there's definitely a big role for the private sector to play, and particularly we've got to be starting at the design stage. We've got to be thinking about the materials, the people, the environment, the cost for people to be able to live in these homes. Throughout the last day and a half here at Change Now, collaboration has been a term that's come up a lot. Yep. You know, we can't be working in silos, we have to be working together. What kinds of partnerships, you know, Saint-Gobain is 360 years young, fingers in lots of pies, shall we say. What kind of partnerships are you looking for that would be great collaborations to look at beyond Change Now? So we've got the barometer, but are there other ways that people can tap into your network, write for the magazine, etc.?
So clearly, as you say, collaboration is a key word. So nothing will happen in the construction sector if we don't break the silos. There are too many silos in this sector between investors, developers, architects, so everybody is working in silos. So we need to have much more cross-sectorial collaboration. We need to have collaborations at global level, because sustainability is a global issue, as well as at local level. Construction is very local, so we need to be able to play
to bridge both of those gaps.
Absolutely.
We can't just look at local, both of them need to be considered.
Absolutely. As a multinational company, we have a role to play at both levels. At global level, because lots of policies, initiatives are taken at global level, but things will happen at local level. So we need also to bridge between the two levels, and we need to act at two levels. A first level for collaboration is clearly to accelerate innovation. So I said before, there are already lots of solutions. Still, we can do better, and innovation will come by more partnerships, by more collaboration. Not only innovation in terms of products, also innovation in terms of working methods, in terms of processes, how to better work together across a project, how to have better design tools to facilitate choices and selections of more sustainable options.
It's interesting that you distinguish that in terms of innovation, because often in construction, when we think about innovation, we think about the products, right? And to start to think, innovation is not just the actual products and solutions, it's also the design and the processes
Absolutely.
that we use from start to finish.
To innovate in the processes will be key in the construction sector. It's too much conservative in terms of processes and way of working. We need also to have more collaboration to be able to look after affordability of construction. So we can't left apart a big part of the market. So today sustainability is in many countries is still too much limited to the upper range of the market. So we need to make sure that through collaboration, it will cascade also all across the market.
So it's not, because we hear a lot about things like the green tax. As soon as we go sustainable, it gets more expensive because it's at that higher end of the market.
At least it's a perception that it has to be more expensive. We can prove it's not more expensive, not always, and again, it's a matter of design, it's a matter of what you will put behind, but it's not necessarily more expensive, or at least we need to make sure that it will be accessible and affordable for a vast majority of citizens across the planet. And maybe a last level where we need more collaboration is, I said before that there are little expectations towards policymakers and public institutions. Still, we believe that at some stage, if you want to scale up in the sector, you need to have better policies and supportive policies. Voluntary initiatives are clearly key to kickstart processes, are clearly key to show the way forward. You need to start on a voluntary basis, but in such a diffuse sector, in such a multidisciplinary sector, if you want to scale up, at some stage you need to have regulations, you need to have supportive policies. And this is where we need collaboration. Collaboration between stakeholders towards policymakers, collaboration with the policymakers to secure that we have a good visibility on what will come next and to make sure that the proper investments will be made.
I mean, collaboration's a really big one, and especially I like how you break down. In the opening, Santiago said everybody must go, but we can't wait for anybody, right? So everybody needs to move forward, but we can't afford to wait for anybody. And I can see that very much applying to the role of policy. As organizations, we can't be waiting for policy in order to take action, but we also need to be working with policy
Absolutely.
in order to scale the action.
Absolutely.
When we talk about sustainability, we also need to think about social sustainability, because that often gets overshadowed with carbon metrics. Let's think about carbon. But what about the social aspect? How are you helping the industry to think beyond emissions into building buildings which are better for people too, not just great buildings, but buildings that are also just great for society?
No, it's a very important point. I mentioned before that we have seen in the results that sustainable construction is very much related to environmental topics, while we strongly believe that a sustainable construction delivers both low environmental footprint and enhanced health and well-being for people living in the buildings. And it's also a matter of social acceptability. We can't ask people to support more efforts in terms of sustainability if we don't deliver on the social dimension. So it's for us it's key, and we believe, and we have already started, and it's an area also of collaboration, that it's very important to bring facts and figures to show first that you can build and renovate and work on the two aspects of better environmental impact and better health and well-being. So both are fully compatible. It's not either or. You can do both at once. And you can also demonstrate, and this is what we need to do more, we can demonstrate that it is affordable. It's even not only affordable in terms of cost, but it delivers also in terms of reduced spending for people. So people, for sure that have less energy spending will have some money savings, but they will have also better living conditions. They will have a better health, so they will save money for their health as well, and it will be a reduced cost for the society in the end. So we can make this case. We have already evidence for that, but this is not known enough. So we need to bring more facts, more evidence that there is a full compatibility between social and environmental dimensions, and that it can deliver in terms of financial aspects.
So it can be financially responsible, socially
Absolutely.
responsible,
Absolutely.
and environmentally
Absolutely.
responsible. There is a point in the middle where all of those meet. And I particularly want to pull out what you said about how important it is to make it something that people want to get behind. Because I think it's very easy to design what you want to design and create products that you think are going to be great. But if individuals aren't bought into it, if they don't understand it, if it doesn't feel like something that's going to be, I don't know, aesthetically pleasing, they're not going to buy it. So we do need to balance all of those dimensions.
And clearly for people, it's much more sexy to say we are building schools where your children will be able to better learn because they will have better acoustics, better indoor air quality. You will have people recovering more quickly in hospitals because the indoor environment will be better than talking, let's work on carbon footprint, let's have less resource consumption. It's not so sexy for people. For sure, it's important as well. But if you can bring this kind of argument,
all of those things together, we'll have a much
clearly
more...
you will create a much stronger momentum and much more demand for more sustainable construction.
Fantastic. Pascal, I could stay here and talk to you for ages, but we're out of time. Ladies and gentlemen, please give Pascal a massive round of applause.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
So we've just heard about what it takes to shift an entire industry. And we've also had a little bit of a look at the role that policy can play, and it's clear that both need to be aligned. In this next conversation, which I'm really excited to bring to you, we'll be looking at people building buildings very differently, and often in some of the most tough conditions as well. From informal housing to disaster response and rethinking city streets, these voices are the ones that are showing us what resilience really looks like in practice. So to join me for this conversation, I have three incredible individuals. I have the director of TETO Brazil, Camila Jordan, the CEO and founder of KONTi Design Studio, Carla Gautier, and the director, Pavillon de l'Arsenal, Marion Valliere. Please welcome them all to the stage. Hello, 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 ladies. Welcome to the stage. I kind of want to begin by setting the scene for everybody with each of you. And it'd be really helpful if you could each introduce yourself through the lens of what you bring to the conversation with your work that connects you to sustainable and resilient construction. I'll start with you, Camila.
Hi, everyone. I'm very happy to be here. I flew in from São Paulo in Brazil, and we work at TETO, is an international Latin American organization present in 18 countries, and we focus on working with the most marginalized informal settlements in the region. So we have different stages of informal settlements. In our work, we focus on the settlements that have the most crucial housing emergency, where people are living on dirt floors, wooden shacks, and really at the forefront of all of the impacts of the climate crisis. So we work together with the residents, always together, and young volunteers to tackle these problems.
Incredible work that you're doing. Marion, can you tell us a little bit about what you're doing?
Hi, so my name is Marion Valliere, and I'm director of Pavillon de l'Arsenal, which is the Center for Architecture and Urban Planning in Paris. So I'm here to talk about Paris and how Paris is being transformed right now, and how we can mix ecology, urban planning, and patrimony in Paris.
Wonderful. And finally, Carla, a little bit about you and the work that you're doing.
Of course, thank you for being here. My name is Carla Gautier, and the construction industry poses 40% of the carbon emissions in the world. that's a huge number, but I choose to see that number as a huge opportunity for change as well, for positive change. So at KONTi Design, what we do is we build housing and commercial solutions in a modular way using upcycled and recycled materials to lower our carbon footprint and really create spaces that are resilient to hurricanes, earthquakes, and fires, but that also regenerate the spaces in which we live in. Now, I know that we cannot do this alone, so one thing that we're trying to do right now as well is create partnerships so that we can expand our mission around the world and just, make a bigger impact to really reduce that 40% into hopefully zero very soon.
I'm incredibly excited about the work all three of you are doing. Often when we talk about building the future, we have this futuristic view of buildings and exciting new innovations that are coming through. But what we don't often talk about is who's being left out of this conversation when we're thinking about the future of construction and why that causes a problem and the sorts of things we should really be focusing on. So Carla, your work is very deeply kind of embedded in who's left out. And so I'd love to hear from you. When you think about the future of construction and innovation, who do you think's normally left out that you're bringing back into the fold?
So that's actually a really interesting question because the answer is really unfortunate. It is the majority of us. We are the ones being left out, and the reason is because even when people are convinced that they want to do the right thing, that they want to build their home or their business in the correct way, most of us need to finance it. Most of us do not have boatloads of cash laying around there to be able to finance a whole construction. So therefore, you have to go to the bank, you have to find investors, and that process is so difficult, especially when it comes to the banks, that even when the person is convinced, the bank basically tells them no, or they tell them, okay, I'll finance this little bit of it. So in the end, they stop their innovation, they stop what they want to do, and that's the majority of us. So I think one of the things that we really need to fix is the financing towards sustainability so that we can actually innovate and create better built environment.
I'm going to pick you back up on that point a little bit later on because I do think it's quite important. We think futuristic, but actually there's a real finance element that we do need to consider here and now, and none of us are immune to that. Camila, from your perspective, you're working with people who arguably are generally, by their nature, not thought of when it comes to construction. Can you maybe share a little bit more about that?
So actually, around the world, we have 2 billion people who live in informal settlements. 2 billion people.
Okay, wait, let me say that.
Yeah.
2 billion with a B, not million, billion people in informal settlements. What does that mean?
That means that most people are, by default, living in precarious housing conditions, either because they had to build their own houses through auto construction, usually throughout many years, where they have to save a lot of money. They usually also work informally, so they have a very large fluctuation of cash income. And then the people that TETO works with specifically are the ones who are completely, even when we think about finance, these people are not even in banks. They really are living day to day because they're living on dirt floors, completely, anything that can happen to their house, the next day they can be gone. So we really, and with climate change, it's getting worse and worse. And these people are the ones who are feeling it the most. So when we think about, the future of construction, the future of our cities, we have to break completely this logic of having segregated cities, of building walls, of building condos. I always say that, at least in Brazil and Latin America, it is very common that we've learned how to build condominiums, but we haven't learned how to build cities, really. Because most people, even when they ascend to a house, they prefer, or they're sold that the idea they're safer behind a wall, they're safer behind a security camera, and that doesn't build cities, that doesn't build security, that doesn't build resilience. So we really have to think about what is the logic of cities that we want to preserve and scale up, and what is the logic that we have to break immediately so that we can't continue doing the same mistakes.
As you were speaking, I could see Marion. That deserves a clap, doesn't it? as you were speaking, I could see Marion in the background nodding her head because it's almost from one extreme to the next. We're talking cities, and we have a city, but even in cities, we have people who are not thought about so much as we think about the building of cities. Can you maybe speak to that?
Yeah, we still have so much to do to involve everyone in city building and to ensure that everybody feels really welcome in public space and in every building. So in Paris, what has been done in the previous years is really to, for example, to rethink public space starting by children, because very often the streets were made for one type of person, which is a non-handicapped person, which is a person with a car. And you know, if you start by other point of views, like children, like handicapped people, then you look at the streets differently and you realize what are the real priorities. And that's how we transform public space in Paris. We have this project called Streets for Children. We transform streets in front of schools, and we make it a green street where children are really safe. And so I think we have to start by this vulnerable point of view to transform our city.
I think vulnerable is probably the word that's underpinning some of this conversation. As we start to look at buildings and start to look at construction, it's very easy to sometimes forget the vulnerable, regardless of the city landscape that we're speaking about and the way their viewpoint on the world. Where do you currently, Camila, was there something to add?
Yeah, I was just going to say...
I spotted it out of the corner of my eye.
I was just going to add that one of the things that I've been learning a lot in the last few years is that if we start with public policy that focuses on the most vulnerable in our society, if we focus on constructing cities and buildings for children, for handicapped, for women, then everyone else is already contemplated. It's like if you have a sieve, if a public policy has a sieve and the holes are too big, people keep falling out because they're not contemplated by this public policy. But if the sieve is very thin, if it thinks about the most vulnerable person in that society, then everyone else is automatically contemplated. And we don't design policy like that. Not yet, or in very few places. So I think, I always like to think about how thin is this sieve that of this public policy that we have, or process or logic that we're operating in cities.
That's such a beautiful analogy. Like how many holes are in the sieve and who's just dropping all the way through it. And speaking of policy planning and regulation, what do you think is actually holding us back from building much more resilient, inclusive cities? Marion, I'm going to start with you. I mean, you're doing lots of stuff here in Paris that's really pivotal and quite revolutionary, but that's not the case everywhere, is it?
It takes a lot of courage and political will to change things. I have been working for 10 years in Paris and on urban planning. And 10 years ago, when we asked, for example, for timber building or for building in stone or having green roofs, a lot of people told us it was impossible. They told us it's not possible in Paris, it's too complicated. And now it's the new rule. So it shows that in 10 years, you can really change the rules of the game. That's what I observed in Paris, and we were able to do it because there was a clear political vision aligned with, of course, economic interests, and together we found solutions, and with architects and with NGOs, we found solutions. So I think when there is a clear vision, we find the solutions.
I love what you said that because what that tells us is there's hope. That tells us that even when it's not quite right, there's hope that we can change it. Carla, I know when we spoke, you had some words to say about regulation and planning, and where it sometimes does the opposite of what you need it to do.
Too often, unfortunately. Yeah, I guess I was speaking before a little bit about how when people, even when they want to, they can't access financing. It's practically impossible to finance any alternative architecture. So because of all the red tape, and there's just so many steps to that regulation. But the biggest thing is that let's say that you're trying to finance your home, right? We are working with an archaic system that is based on appraisals that are based on comparables. That is literally the opposite of innovation, because what they're saying to you is you have to build what has already been built, even though we know that it's being built the wrong way and it's being built in a way that is destroying our planet. So when my clients come to me and they're like, I want to build my home, I want to be better for the environment, I don't want my home to have a positive carbon footprint, I'm like, great, let's do this. And they're like, okay, wait, but I can't just pay for it cash. I need to be able to financing. And the bank's like, well, sorry, but there's no other buildings like this, so you can't innovate. So it just becomes kind of a dead cycle where people want to do something good, but then policy and regulations and all this red tape are literally stopping them from doing it. So what we need to do is get rid of all that red tape and start allowing and giving the tools for people to be able to do what they want and to be able to do the right thing.
We talk about finance and innovation, and often when we're thinking about finance, we're thinking of financing for the innovation, and not necessarily what you're speaking about, Carla, which is we have something innovative, but how do people get the finance to buy the home? And most people are buying homes with mortgages, and if mortgages are built on comparables, and what you're designing is something that doesn't exist right now, there isn't anything to compare it to. And so we need to rethink that. That's one thing on the table. Camila, what about you? What do you think? Where do you think policy needs a little bit of a nudge along?
I want to take the word that Marion said, which is courage, which I think specifically, I'm very biased, of course, but I think in our organization, we are very courageous because we focus on the silent housing emergency that is happening at the same time that we believe in long-term definite solutions. But there is so much taboo around, for example, transitional solutions. So if you think about the 2 billion people who live in informal settlements, and I did this really quick math in Brazil, if we were to start and urbanize one favela a week starting today, we would take 230 years to include all of these settlements into our cities. 230
years.
And the reality is that we design policy for the long term, but today, there's a lot of people today that will fear the rain that is going to come at night. That the fear that the heat is going to, or the lack of ventilation is causing something to their children. So there is a silent housing emergency going on, and not only in Brazil, in many other countries. And we need to start also discussing, okay, in the meantime, since urbanization takes so long when it's powered by the government or by our societies, what is happening to these people in the meantime? Because today, people are being born and dying in wooden shacks, and no one is doing anything about it. And as a nonprofit, we want to partner with governments. We want to partner up to be able to scale up. But there's so much taboo around transitional housing, for example, because people say, oh, it's not definite. Yes, it's not definite, but do you prefer to let someone live in a dirt floor wooden shack, or you prefer to give this person some dignity so that they can sustain how, as a society, we're failing because we're leaving 2 billion people outside of being complete citizens, actually. Because you don't have water, you don't have sanitation, your house is horrible. So how can you even feel as a citizen if you are not accessing your basic rights?
So there's an opportunity to think not just long term, but we actually need to think about what can we do right now where policy can help support the unsupported and the vulnerable.
And the financing around that,
and
too.
The financing. Carla, I can see you jumping back in.
I just wanted to say, it's Maslow's pyramid. We cannot fix society if we don't have a proper, dignified roof over our heads. So it's, we have to start at the base level. We need food, we need housing. Then we can think about everything else.
Absolutely true. We've talked a lot about what's wrong, but you're on this stage because you're all doing some amazing work. And so we have some real hope for what's possible. Marion, maybe you can share some example of where policy design and collaboration has actually helped to accelerate. Where should we be putting our focus, putting our attention, perhaps getting some more funding behind because there's already some momentum?
The good thing with cities is that you can very quickly show what ecology is and how we can change things. For example, in Paris, we look at every type of space, like schoolyards, like streets, like buildings, courtyards, and we think, okay, how can we transform those spaces with architects, with urban planners, with all the people who dream and act? And for example, if you take a schoolyard, very often in Paris, before it was like mineral, only 1 or 2 trees, and a lot of space for young boys playing soccer, less space for young girls. And so what we do is that we transform the schoolyards into gardens. That's a very simple public policy that works very well, because if you transform a schoolyard into a garden, it changes everything in what's the atmosphere for children, what types of games they do, and so that's a good thing, you know, with cities, is that you can really have a utopia, but directly on the ground. So that's why I love architecture and urban planning. And it's our role, the place I run, Pavillon de l'Arsenal, which is a museum, is to show with books, with exhibitions, how we can transform things. And we will do an entire exhibition about schools in June to show how every space in schools can be transformed for children, for example.
I love like moving from functional to like we can bring function, play, design all into the same space so that people exist in those spaces in a very different way. Camila, you shared earlier about people who are really underrepresented, not thought about in a housing emergency. And we've spoken a lot about what that feels like and how that's really quite traumatic. But there's hope. There's hope. Can you give us some examples of what is possible when we get it right?
Of course. I mean, we are actually, as an organization this year, we will be reaching 1.5 thousand people with housing solutions, transitional housing solutions in Latin America. And I think, and we do that by mobilizing youth. So everyone that goes through our organization is also seeing the city from a different perspective, is working together, hand to hand, shoulder to shoulder with the residents from these informal settlements, and thinking about, to the future, what can I do? I mean, I was a volunteer, so I actually did that process. I started as a volunteer and completely changed my life because of what I experienced during the organization. But we have, in other countries in Latin America, unfortunately not in Brazil yet, but we have governments who are partnering more and more, also because of the climate crisis is getting more often, you know, the incidence of hurricanes and fires and everything is getting, we have more often of these incidents, and so we have some countries like in Argentina and Mexico where TETO is partnering with governments to support these families with transitional housing. And that immediately also gives a direct path in informal settlements to government, which are often completely cut out. So it's a first step to bring this, to bring dignity, and then continue working. Of course, you have to keep working. You have to change policy so that these settlements, wherever possible, because you also have a lot of people living in risk areas, but wherever possible to actually urbanize these settlements and bring them into our cities.
So the settlements exist, and there's a route for governments to plug right into it and start to run with it right now. So that's exciting. Carla, give us some examples. I need good news stories here. Give us some examples of some amazing work that you're doing as well.
This is actually a great moment for that question, because we are currently building the first ever fully self-sustainable hotel in Puerto Rico. And the great thing is that it's going to be a network. It's going to be built out of shipping containers. So we're upcycling. We're bringing our carbon footprint down to 80% in our building. We are collecting rainwater. We are using solar energy for all of our energy. And not only that, but while Puerto Rico continues to be the paradise that it is, people will be able to learn, enjoy, and retreat in these places. But when disaster hits, because it will hit again, these places will be the only thing standing. So they're going to turn into emergency hubs. So this process has actually been super interesting because it has forced us to bring in, like we're currently finishing our fund, raising our fund to be able to build it. We're ready to build, we're in permitting. But to be able to get to this point, we have had to collaborate with all of the teams from the beginning, with the financing team, with the construction team, and with the design team. So it's been kind of a different process than what we're used to in architecture a lot of the times. But also, I think it's the best way to create these types of buildings, because we need to make sure that we are able to monetize sustainability in the end, so that it can actually be sustainable, so that we can keep making it that way, and so that we can keep convincing investors and banks as well to be able to do this. So I think this is a really cool example that we're working on right now, and hopefully next year, if we see here, I'll be showing some pictures of the built hotel, and you guys are all invited to come visit as well.
Actually, I just forgot to say something super important, but we've been designing inside of the UN Race to Zero campaign and the UN Climate Champions. We are part in Latin America of the Roof of Our Heads initiative. And with this initiative, we're actually prototyping many different types of resilient homes around Latin America, and Brazil is one of them. So we've been doing workshops with the communities to think about and hear about what actually are the most crucial things in their day-to-day lives in terms of the climate crisis. And then we've redesigned the home that we built for many years to be a new resilient house. And this house is actually has been co-designed with the communities, and we're hoping that it will be also widely implemented with the support of governments.
So there's lots of incredible solutions here. I do encourage you all to go and check out each of these organizations and the incredible work that they're doing. One last question as we wrap up. If you could shift one thing, I love asking people this question. If you could shift one thing, it could be a policy, it could be a mindset, it could be a process, something that would accelerate the way that we transition to more sustainable construction. What would it be, Camila?
I think it's the mindset around transitional solutions. I think we have to be real about it. We have to look reality in the eyes, put our feet where we need to be, and actually say, yes, we need definite solutions, we need permanent housing, but in the meantime, we need to look at what's happening right now, because right now people are dying from where they're living, and that can't be natural. That can't be something that we just, as a society, be it here or be it in Brazil or in Mexico, is okay. We can't be as a society. And can I say one other thing? Is also that I think Change Now could have more discussions with different partners, so more NGOs, more governments, with business, because we actually need to collaborate between these three pillars to get better solutions, to have better implementations. So I hope next year you have more of these other players also here on stage discussing.
So more collaboration and a different mindset around transitional housing. Marion, what would be the mindset policy? What shifts do you think people need to make?
Many things, but one important thing is to transform all empty spaces, like all empty offices. There are a lot here in the region, into housings, because we still have so many people sleeping in the streets in Paris or elsewhere, and we have millions of empty square meters of office buildings. So I think we have to transform urgently those spaces into housing.
So transformation of building, urgent transformation of office spaces into buildings. And finally, Carla, what one shift do you want to leave us with?
It's hard to pick one, because I think mindset is huge because it trickles down to everything else. But I'd like to focus a little bit more on the policy and the regulations. Because if we don't do that, like, I truly believe that the world is ready. People are ready to take on these solutions. But if regulation stops them from doing it, then there's nowhere we can keep going. It's a complete contradiction. So, like, for example, like in Puerto Rico, I'm pretty sure nobody in Puerto Rico thinks that climate change is a hoax, because we've all gone through it. When Hurricane Maria hit in 2017, it did not matter how much money you had at that point because there was nothing to buy in the supermarket, zero. Literally the aisles in the supermarket were completely empty. So unfortunately, we had a slap in the face that made people realize what is going on. And now people are ready to go. They're ready to change. They're ready to rebuild. They have to rebuild because we lost 70,000 homes in one night. But now they want to rebuild in the proper way. So if we don't change policy, if we don't pave the path and give people these tools to be able to do that, we cannot help with disaster relief. We cannot help with our own homes, and we cannot help with the businesses that are going to flourish and that are going to continue to come up because we cannot build the proper way. So I think policy and regulation is really the biggest thing that we need to change. People are ready, we need to just give them the tools to do it.
Beautiful words to end on. Thank you, ladies, so much for your time here on the stage. Give them a warm round of applause. So that actually concludes this session. My name's been Lovelda Vincenzi. Thank you so much for joining and enjoy the rest of your time here at Change Now. See you soon.